After a 3-month-long hiatus, I am finally back and honestly feeling more motivated than I have in a while. Now, I haven't exactly been consistent with posting lately, and there's a couple of reasons for that, but the main one is that I was busy planning my very first international trip in a very long time. See, in my 20s, I didn't really give myself permission to rest. I focused on school, got my degrees, and jumped straight into work, and my idea of a vacation was basically just staying at home for a couple of days. Never fully a week, and never really unplugging either. So when my friend invited me to her destination wedding in Portugal, I realized this was finally my chance to actually leave the country for the first time in 12 years. And more than that, to push myself a little outside of my comfort zone. And I'm really glad that I did that because Portugal literally blew my mind away. It's a beautiful country with some of the warmest people I've ever encountered, and an experience that actually gave me a lot to think about. By the way, this isn't a travel vlog. I'm not here to recap my trip, so if you were expecting that, I would suggest that you stop listening to this video right now, or stay, because this is actually really important. This is actually a personal reflection about finally taking my own advice, because the name of this channel is literally Take 5, an expression for taking a break, and it took me flying across the Atlantic to actually understand what that means. So let's actually talk about it. But first, I want to share a statistic I came across in a report called Voices Unheard, Canada's first ever national health survey focused on Black women, published last year in November actually by the Black Women's Institute for Health. While Statistics Canada reports that 4% of women nationally experience suicidal thoughts, this survey found that 27.4% of Black women in Canada have struggled with thoughts of self-harm, more than 6 times the national average. This is more than 1 in 4 Black women. And of course, a big part of what's driving this is chronic stress. Unsurprisingly, this is the kind of stress that builds up when you're least expecting it, when you're constantly navigating systems that weren't necessarily built for you, carrying everyone else around, because that's basically what we do as Black women, right? And never giving yourself the permission to stop. And as it turns out, not stopping isn't just a personal habit. It's very much structural. A 2023 report by Leaning In found that Black women are less likely than their peers to have access to flexible work schedules or paid time off. We actually happen to have the highest labor force participation of all women and the least access to rest. Now, if you had asked me a few months ago whether I was chronically stressed, I probably would have laughed and said no. I worry, definitely, but I've always been good at keeping it together. Good enough that I could convince even myself that everything was actually under control when in reality it isn't. But Portugal revealed something important to me, because when I actually unplugged, I started to notice what my brain had been quietly carrying around this whole time. And what I noticed was when I'm not distracted, I am almost always worrying about something. My family, my health, my work performance, the pace at which I'm chasing my own goals and dreams, whether I'm even doing enough, whether I'm moving fast enough, whether I'm moving too slow. All of these things are brewing in my mind 24/7. And obviously that takes up a lot of real estate in my head. And when I'm busy, I don't always feel it because the busyness itself becomes the distraction. It's only when I finally sat and I thought about it, that's when the realization kind of kicked in. And unsurprisingly, when I got home, I picked up my worries right where I left them. But this time it hit differently, because now I knew exactly what the alternative felt like. The lightness, that freedom, coming back to the weight of it all felt a little heavier by comparison. And of course, that contrast taught me something I hadn't really internalized before. As someone who has never really prioritized travel, who always filed it under luxury rather than necessity, I'm starting to seriously reconsider that. Because what I experienced in Portugal wasn't just a really good time, it was a necessary reset. And I think I had been very overdue for one. Clearly, because it had been 12 years since I traveled internationally. So whether it's traveling abroad or just carving out time to be somewhere other than your couch or your desk, I'm starting to believe that rest and change of scenery aren't rewards for when you've worked really hard. They're part of what keeps you and I going in the first place. And obviously, this idea isn't new or revolutionary. About 2 years ago, I read a book that I think about often and that I'm actually going to reread again this summer. It's called Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey, also known as the Nap Bishop. And her core argument is something that hit me all over again when I got back from Portugal. That is, rest isn't luxury or a reward, it's a necessity. And for Black women specifically, choosing to rest is a radical act. Rest isn't a pause from your life, and it's not something to be negotiated. It is very much part of your life. Anyways, I'm really glad to be back, and I'm glad I took the time to actually go to Portugal. It was a lot of fun. And if you've been patiently waiting, thank you so much for not unsubscribing, because that would have been a real feeling, and I wouldn't have blamed you. I appreciate you for sticking around. And before I close out this video, I do want to say that you should take 5. Literally, take a break. Leave. Go outside. It's beautiful. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.